Welcome everyone. The Palestinian Authority's foreign ministry has condemned what it called an Israeli massacre in Rafah, while the European Union is extremely concerned about the situation. This comes after Palestinian health officials said at least 67 people were killed in Rafah after Israel carried out intense aerial bombardments in the southern Gaza city. According to officials, Palestinians are bracing for a major offensive on the densely crowded urban area. Israel's military said it had struck a number of terror targets in the Shabura district of Rafah, and the strikes had concluded. Hamas has warned that an Israeli ground assault in Rafah would blow up negotiations to release the group's remaining captives in Gaza. However, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to press on with the offensive. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has welcomed home the 2 Israeli hostages who were rescued overnight from Rafah in a raid by the country's forces. He wrote on the social media platform X, formerly Twitter, "Fernando and Louis are welcome home." The Israeli military says the 2 men are in good medical condition as they were taken to Sheba Medical Center in central Israel for tests. Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments follow warnings from the international community against expanding Israel's offensive further into Rafah, where an estimated 1.5 billion people have been sheltering from the fighting. Spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, said the hostages were found on the 2nd floor of a building in Rafah. They had been kidnapped by Hamas in the October 7 border attack that triggered the war. Israel says both men also hold Argentinian citizenship. Meanwhile, the office of the Argentina's President Javier Milei praised Israel for the rescue of its 2 citizens. The United Nations has been commenting on the humanitarian crisis in the Rafah city of Gaza. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric says lack of access to food, clean water and sanitation facilities in the area have led to an outbreak of diseases.
The Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs say the unprecedented density of Rafah's population make it nearly impossible to protect civilians in the event of ground attacks. OCHA says the congestion in Rafah has reached a point where normal routes are blocked by tents set up by families seeking any flat, clean surface available. In the last 3 months, the city has produced the equivalent of a year's worth of garbage, according to what municipal authorities are telling us. OCHA says the scarcity of food, clean water, health services, and sanitation facilities have led to an outbreak of preventable diseases. The humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Jamie McGoldrick, says that fuel generators and spare parts are urgently needed to improve people's access to clean water, noting that the southern Gaza desalination plant is only working up to 15% of its original capacity. Our humanitarian partners estimate that about 100,000 families in Gaza need shelter support, including tents for winter weather and other supplies. Since October 7th, they've distributed some 40,000 tents, primarily in the areas of Rafah, Khan Yunis, and the middle area of the Strip. An additional 28,000 tents are in the pipeline. That's according to what we are told by our humanitarian colleagues.
And for the first time in 13 years, the World Health Organization and its partners have gained access to Al-Aqsa Hospital in central Gaza, where they provided trauma supplies, medicines, and tetanus toxoid vaccines to address the health needs of 3,700 patients. In addition, the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, delivered enough aid and medicines to those in need. The hospital has gradually restored functionality, expanding from just 5 doctors in January to approximately 300 physicians and 400 nurses.
We are here to support the health system that's suffering not only because of the chronic blockade and this actual war, but also from the movement of population that impedes health workers to do their work at the best possible way. A ceasefire has to be achieved as soon as possible now, so that we make sure that the health workers are able to deliver at the best of their capacities.
Just visited the trauma ward.
which was completely overcrowded with trauma cases, but also with 50 medical cases which were there already for days, and which should have kept at other wards, but there was no place. We brought in medical supplies, trauma supplies, and anesthetics, etc. There's a chronic shortage of analgesics, of medicines, dialysis medicines, lab equipment, but also specifically orthopedic supplies and trauma supplies. We will continue to, of course, as WHO, to supply that.
UNFPA is here at Al-Aqsa Hospital on a joint UN mission, and we just delivered supplies for midwives, as well as life-saving drugs and equipment to enable medical professionals to perform surgeries and to care for women with life-threatening complications during childbirth.
Well, the Syrian Foreign Minister Faisal Mekdad says that the country is fully prepared to defend its territory in a potential military conflict with Israel. He was speaking at a meeting with the Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian in Damascus, where they discussed joint support for Palestinians during Israel's war with Hamas in Gaza. According to the Syrian foreign minister, the country has been resisting Israel since 1948, when the first full-blown-out war broke out between several Arab nations and the newly established Jewish state. He added in his words, Syria has fought wars against the Israeli occupation and is ready to fight wars, but it will decide when and how. In another development, the United Kingdom has announced new sanctions against 4 extremist Israeli settlers, saying they have committed human rights abuses in the West Bank against Palestinian communities. The statement from the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office said the settlers violently attacked Palestinians in the occupied West Bank using physical aggression, threatening families at gunpoint and destroying property in a targeted and calculated effort to displace Palestinian communities. The 4 individuals sanctioned are all males aged between 21 and 31. British Foreign Secretary David Cameron said the sanctions place restrictions on those involved in some of the most horrific abuses of human rights, adding that the settlers are forcing Palestinian people off land that's rightfully theirs. National security risk strategist and former British police officer Vince Onyekwelu joins us now for more. Vince, a warm welcome to the program today.
Good evening. Thank you.
Right, so good to have you. Let's begin with your assessment of the war so far and the recent bombardment on Rafah by Israeli forces.
Basically, let's go straight to the issue of Rafah. Obviously, Rafah is a very pivotal city outside the Gaza Strip. It's at the border between the Gaza Strip, the Big Sea, and then the Egyptian border. And obviously, we have to understand how pivotal Rafah border is. Rafah has been the epicenter of importation and exportation of goods, services, and trade from the Gaza Strip into Egypt. The border between Rafah and Egypt is about 50 meters below the surface of the earth. That is a concrete walk. So the Egyptians made sure they casted a concrete walk that is about 50 meters below the surface of the earth and over 30 meters over the surface of the earth. So obviously the Egyptians are worried about something which made them to cast concrete floors beneath the earth to about 50 meters under the ground to avoid people going in from Rafah into Egypt or from Egypt into Rafah. Still, there is corruption in that border. There is a level of illegal activity. Majority of the arms that passes into Gaza, most of them do pass into the Rafah border. So there are criminal elements, there are gangsters, there are organized criminals that actually work with the Hamas people to bring in rifles and ammunition and chemicals for making of dangerous weapons. So basically, right now, if the Israelis are thinking about attacking Rafah, we have to understand the need. if there are strong evidences that most of the Israeli hostages are in Rafah, if I'm going to lead an operation into such an area, the concern for me will be, how do I minimize, reduce, avoid, transfer the destruction of innocent lives? On the other side, my focus will be on how to rescue hostages. Now, on Friday, the Israelis attacked a part of Rafah border, and they rescued 2 hostages that were taken away during the 7th October invasion. And that is a very strong evidence that if the terrorist Hamas had the underground network to move hostages from Israel into northern Gaza, into southern Gaza, Khan Yunis, and down to Rafah border, that was where 2 of them were rescued, 60-year-old and 70-year-old. So obviously, every strategic person will understand that there is potential. There are more hostages in Rafah. Now, for Israel to carry out this operation is 100% supported by me. However, they need to do much more to reduce civilian, protect lives and properties of innocent civilians. And that question mark is about who is an innocent civilian in a society that have encouraged the issue of kill the Jews. Even children, I've got authentic videos where children as young as 6 years we are taught to become engineers so they can bomb and kill Jews. So there is a thin line. Maybe you've studied a book called Thin Line Between Love and Hate. There is no line between who is a Hamas terrorist and who is a Palestine civilian. There are strong indications that many of them are terrorists by night and become innocent civilians by day.
Right. If I may come in there, you have put out a strong, argument that, Israel defending its action and, to rescue those, 2 men that were taken away during that raid. But does it not say that does this not suggest that Israel, as the Prime Minister has been saying, that it will not rest until it gets, everything it wants, that it clearly shows that Israel will go through any means necessary to accomplish its military goals right there?
Honestly, if you have nothing to hide, the innocent civilians in Rafah would comfortably work with the Israeli soldiers. It's more like a screening. If you're innocent, pass through this corridor and move south towards Khan Yunis. If you have something to hide, then play games. So if I were there and I'm innocent, I would say, let this screening start, but make it comfortable and peaceful for the civilians. Bring them more aid, food, and blankets, whatever makes them comfortable. But the idea of saying, Israel should not attempt to do a screening in Rafah, it's more like saying that terrorists are dictating the tone. And listen, when you fight a war on terror, there are terror cells across the world that are watching and learning. If the terrorist cells in Hamas decide and dictate where Israel can look for their citizens that we are taking illegally, then terrorist cells in Nigeria can also tell you not to enter some local government in Nigeria or state in Nigeria. So you don't actually allow terrorists to dictate. If you have nothing to hide, allow Israelis to come there. Let the United Nations monitor to make sure that people are not killed without reason. However, if you're a Hamas terrorist covering up as a civilian and you think Israel will not come to look for their own, they will come. And actually, you have to understand that Rafah has potential to have more tunnel, more than they found in Khan Yunis or in northern Gaza. So I think Israel should step in, be very cautious to reduce destruction of lives and properties of innocent people, but they should step in to look for their own. That is how you operate criminal gangs. You don't have to negotiate with them to decide where you go or where you don't go. Criminals don't dictate. What criminals do, they destroy, they cause havoc, and when they are arrested, they go to jail. They do time. You don't negotiate with them. You don't mess for them, because if you do, others across the world will become copycat criminals. They will copy what's going on in Gaza and try to do the same thing in Afghanistan, even in Nigeria. So Israel should be very cautious with this operation to make sure they reduce and minimize the destruction of lives and property of innocent people. But should they carry on, 1,000%, they should go and get theirs. You don't hold my citizens down and you tell me, if I'm a commander, I'm going to go there with my men, and my job is to go there, come back with my men alive so they can go back to their families. And any criminal who stops us from doing our work will be prosecuted or arrested. If you're to be arrested, then you know what? We do what we have to do. But it's a job to be done, and we don't look at colors, we don't look at basics.
Yes, and I believe that this is, Israel is saying this is a justification, for it to go encroach into Rafah and, do what it needs to do. I'll just leave that there. But clearly, the conflict is taking another shape. That's what this means. What should be the international community's priority at this time as regards their stance on the war?
Beautiful question, beautiful question. The international community should do more. I am not in support of Israel invading people's homelands to destroy innocent lives and properties. I am totally and utterly against such. On the other side, I'm not in support of a terrorist organization who are not legally in charge of Rafah. Hamas are only in charge of Gaza Strip. They are not even in charge of the West Bank, because this is a very big country with a peculiar location. So for Hamas to decide to use force, I think the international communities, especially the UN, the United Nations, should do more. They should play more. Why am I saying that? The United Nations Refugee and Works Agency have been seriously accused that, to the extent that some of their members participated physically during the 7th October attack in Israel. Do you know what it means that a United Nations employee participated in the killing of Israelis on 7th of October? At least about 12 or 11 have been successfully fingered. But where are they today? They have disappeared. So UN has to play more role, not to be seen to be biased towards Israel or towards Hamas. Do not forget, this war is between Israel and Hamas. It's not a war between Israel and Palestine. Palestinians are innocent, but the terror group called Hamas that Israel is trying to uncover, the people that use millions of monies that foreign agencies send to them to dig tunnels. So international bodies, countries have to be more careful how they send money to Gaza to make sure that the money sent to Gaza are not used to smuggle weapons and to dig tunnels and to train children on how to kill other people. The United Nations also has to be less biased. All those 11 agents of the UNRWA, United Nations Refugee and Works Agency, needs to be arrested and prosecuted to give Israelis the confidence that UN should be trusted. Right now, the Israelis don't seem to trust the UN. The UN are looking as if they are confused in what they are doing. And the people of Gaza need to understand that terrorists can never save your lives. I am against Israel killing Palestine. I am against Hamas using people as human shield. You don't take two Israelis into a location, use civilians to shield them, and then when they come for them, human beings are killed. And you start to shout, oh, they've killed civilians. But you are the ones that use them as human shield. So there's going to be a need for deep orientation that terror is not the way forward. South Africa fought apartheid. They never used this sort of terror. Many other countries across the world fought apartheid. They never use this kind of terror. Do not use your civilians as human shield. We need to see more honesty from international communities. They should be careful where they send their funds and who they send their funds. And nations like Qatar, who are playing very pivotal role in this, has to be also be mindful that at least 3 or 4 top leaders of Hamas terrorist organizations are living peacefully and innocently in Qatar. So if you are shielding Hamas leaders in Qatar and you want to come and make peace deal with Israel, they'll be having a laugh at you. So obviously, many nations are being biased here. I am not supporting Israel. I'm not supporting Hamas. But you don't cause human shield against hostages of Israel nationality and you expect me to look at you? No. If I go there, I'm going out to rescue people, alive or dead, hopefully alive, and I want my men to come back home to their family. So everybody has a role to play, from the US to the UK to France to Qatar to the Arab nation. Look at what's going on in Iran. The same issue. Iran has a say in what's going on in Hamas. Look at what's going on in Lebanon. The same influence of a militia from Iran is causing the issue in Lebanon. Do you know how many Lebanese are living in Nigeria today? Most of them have been in Nigeria for the past 30 years because of the same militia group from Iran that made them uncomfortable that they have to leave Lebanon to come to Nigeria to live. So the bottom line, there's international countries that are playing roles that seem to be encouraging terrorism. And you know what? The good men will say no. Darkness can never overcome goodness. The light must overcome darkness.
Right, and it's good you mentioned, those other countries, around, and of course, the international community as well. A country like Syria, for instance, is saying that it's also ready for war with Israel if it comes to that. What do you see? Do you see this as a potential regional crisis as a result of the spillover effects of the Israel-Hamas war, what we've been seeing already, the Houthis and, the Iranian issue that you also mentioned, the crisis in the Red Sea?
Exactly. It's actually growing. It has potential to grow more than this. But when you look at all what's playing out, it's like a chessboard. There is a particular nation that is totally against Hamas, and they are supposed to be the champions of the Arab League. Saudi Arabia is totally against Hamas. Why? Egypt, that is a neighbor in Rafah border, refused to open the border. Why? Because the so-called religious, because I'm very careful with what I say, the religious brotherhood that has been causing crisis in Egypt has strong link to the terrorist group Hamas. So Egypt doesn't want to bring Hamas into Egypt. That is why they are shutting their borders, and they have 50 meters of underground concrete to shield criminals from coming into Egypt, and 30 meters of overground concrete wall to stop them, and barbed wires and all those valleys. So the bottom line is, what the Houthis are doing in Yemen is part of the bigger war. What they are doing in Lebanon is part of the bigger war. What's going on in Iran is part of the bigger war. And for you to get this sorted, we need to see Saudi Arabia, who is a highly respected nation, to come into this play and to find a peace. But Hamas is a terrorist organization. They are not the leaders of Palestine people. Palestine have a president, President Abbas. He runs Palestine. Remember, it's only in 2016 that Hamas took over Gaza Strip. Before 2016, Gaza was in the hands of the president of Palestine. Don't forget, last year in Lebanon, there's a very big Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon. Hamas fought against Hamas, and they were killing each other far away in Lebanon, in another person's country. So you see the reason why Egyptians don't want to get involved in this? You see why Saudi Arabia don't want to get involved in this? So countries like Syria, if they want to get involved in this, it's their prerogative. Countries like Iran, they want to get involved, it's their prerogative. But the bottom line is, we can never allow a terror organization to dictate the tone of a nation. Because once you do that, other terrorist organizations across the world will learn, they will become copycats, and they will now implement their own in different countries. And we should be against that. As I said to you, I'm against Israel kind of killing innocent people's apartheid structure. I'm also against terrorism in any form. And Hamas is a terrorist organization. And Israel has every right to be fair, to be careful that civilians are not killed, but they have a right to go and get theirs wherever they are, in Rafah or in Khan Yunis or in northern, anywhere across the world, even in Iran. They have a right to go there and get them. That is what a nation is supposed to be doing.
Right, security strategist, security risk strategist, Vince Onyekwelu, I must thank you for this robust discussion and your time on the program today.
Thanks for having me. Good evening.